Hey there, this is episode 82 of the first 10 minutes. I'm Tony Parmenter.
I'm Steve Halliwell.
And I'm Aaron Williams.
And this is a video games podcast where we play the first 10 minutes of a video game. Then we sit down here to discuss how well that game communicates itself to the player, both in terms of what the game is about and how to play the game. In response to our latest listener poll, which you can find at the first 10 minutes on Twitter, you, the listeners, voted for us to play Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. Tony, I played that game. How did it go? Thanks for asking me. I'm going to assume that you two fine gentlemen are actually interested in hearing about this.
Yeah, very.
Otherwise, it just sounds like me talking to myself.
It's a passing interest.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's tuck in, as Dumbledore would say. Sorry, I just literally finished reading Harry Potter to my kid. So,
alas, Dragon's Dogma.
So Dragon's Dogma, Wikipedia defines Dragon's Dogma as a 2012 action role-playing video game developed and published by Capcom. Would you like to hear some Steam tags, he asks rhetorically.
Fuck yes.
Wonderful. The Steam tags for this game are RPG open world character customization, action, adventure, fantasy single-player, dark fantasy third-person, dragons, action, RPG, magic, great soundtrack, exploration, atmospheric, difficult, story-rich, JRPG, multiplayer, walking simulator.
So wait, let me get this straight. This is both a fantasy and a dark fantasy?
It is indeed both of those things simultaneously.
What are the metrics for measuring between what constitutes as fantasy and dark fantasy?
Well, unfortunately, nobody can be told what the dark fantasy is. You have to see it for yourself.
Yeah, like I don't know. I know what it is when I see it.
I imagine it more like cardinal directions. It's like it's not north nor northeast. It's nor northeast.
It's
Right.
Northeast east.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so when I start this game, there's kind of almost like a stone wall background with a carving in relief of a dragon on it. There's kind of a lot of flames and a lot of light flickering on this. I get an option from the very start. The three options in the menu are main menu, manual, and exit game. So I'm assuming this is kind of like a launch part of the menu before you get to the real main menu. It struck me as a very odd choice, especially when the
Welcome to the pre-menu.
Especially when the tooltip for main menu tells me go to main menu.
Okay.
So I elected to choose this as the moment where my 10 minutes started, even though I wasn't entirely sure that it would be the start of anything. So off we go.
Did you click? You selected main menu?
I did. I selected main menu. Main menu then
solved the main menu puzzle.
It then gave me the options in the main menu of new game, hard mode, and options. And with new game being the default option, that's the one that I selected. So as I make this selection, then we get like a little bit of a piano ditty. We get a little bit of a fire sort of particly burn effect. Dark Arisen appears in the bottom left-hand corner, kind of on fire. And I'm assuming this is like your icon spinning menu loading thing. I then get a couple of paragraphs of text center aligned, and this is with a little bit of art behind it, sort of low key grayscale art. And this text says, "A vast army formed to slay a dragon, the ultimate incarnation of evil. But against such fearsome resistance, the army was crushed." New paragraph. "The people's hopes fell upon a chosen one, and with those who followed this gifted soul, ellipses." And this remains on screen while the Dark Arisen burning logo stays there. And then after this, the screen goes black and I start hearing a little bit of ambient sound. And then another line of text in a different font on a plain black background sort of ripples in from left to right, letter by letter. And it says, "In another place, in another life, another child of man blazes your path."
Is that Talking Heads lyrics?
I will leave it up to the listener to determine the particular specificity of the verb blazes.
Yeah.
So this ambient noise then is revealed to be the actual in-game footage itself, because I go to video game camera The camera's kind of slowly pulling down, almost like a reverse Nathan Drake, you're in control now camera move.
Sure.
So it's sort of sweeping down a little bit behind this character. I appear to be in some sort of a medieval ruin. There's a lot of rubble and a lot of stone, but it feels like I'm inside a castle or some sort of structure. The person who is clearly me, because they're facing directly away from camera, is holding a shield. There is another character standing near me, facing me, who also has a sword and shield, is wearing a helmet, and has a lantern, a lit lantern, attached to their hip. I get a tooltip.
That's dangerous.
Yep, I get a tooltip with a little audio cue, like a little tinkle, that matches with this window appearing. And this tooltip says, using a lantern will hold darkness at bay. Press I to open your inventory. And then this character who's standing next to me pipes up and says, how dark it's gotten. Have you a light source? As he is in the middle of saying this, the rest of the known UI of the universe appears on screen simultaneously.
Okay.
This includes his name tag over his head and what I assume is a health bar. His name is Salde. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's spelled S-A-L-D-A, so I'm going to go with Salde because that's more awkward to say and will sound great on radio. He also has a little red pip next to his health bar. At the moment, I don't know what that means, but I can make an assumption on it later. The tooltip about the lantern is still down the bottom, in the center. I have saving content, please don't turn off your computer, savey icon on the right.
All right.
In the top left, I have a big scroll of parchment that says, quest log updated, the end at the beginning, pursue the dragon.
Oh,
right.
what?
All right.
Below that, I have a little window that has the dialogue that Salda has just spoken, how dark it's gotten, have you a light source. Below that is a mini-map. Next to that is 1,190 with what I assume is my health bar. And then over in the bottom right corner, I have two mouse icons with a right click saying heavy attack and a left click saying light attack. Then the E button is there with nothing next to it, and the spacebar icon with jump written next to it. Now I have to stress, all of this appears simultaneously as this character speaks and begins to walk, I would say towards me, but it's kind of into and then around me.
It's like the virtual equivalent of being picked up and thrown into a swimming pool.
So I pause for quite a while here because I'm clearly trying to figure out what's going on. The parchment in the top left disappears. Checkpoint save complete. Tells me that the auto load has finished. And then eventually I remember to hit the I button. So I'm immediately thrown into the inventory screen where my assumption is that I should find a lantern because that's what Salde has talked about. It appears that my name is Savan, S-A-V-A-N, because I'm the only other character listed on the left of screen, immediately above Solder. We are apparently both level 20. We are apparently both sword, which I assume means warrior. I think there's a thing about encumbrance. I appear to be carrying 13.13 somethings. Possibly,
No, hey,
I assume it's
Tony,
a weight.
Can I stop you for a second?
I assume it's a weight icon, but I like to think it could also be a cowbell.
Yeah, it's the number of cowbells you currently have.
You want to stick with cowbell.
Sure.
Can I ask you a question?
No. Yes.
So you got 1,190 health points.
I assume it's health points. Yes.
Sure. You're level 20.
I am.
And what was the other thing you said? You were encumbered by how many?
I assume this is like I'm carrying 13.13 kilos of stuff, pounds of stuff.
13.13 kilos. Okay. Are you sure you haven't played this before? Like,
I'm positive.
Is this the beginning?
So I believe, well, it tells me the end at the beginning, pursue the dragon. So I'm assuming what's happening here is a little bit of an abilities thing that is also a setup for a story arc.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
That
All right.
also-
This is God
yeah.
of War. I get it.
So
End of the beginning and blazing someone else's trail and stuff. Yeah.
So there's a ton of other stuff on the screen. It tells me I can select a category with the arrow keys. I have tabs of inventory. The one that it defaults to is called curatives. I have 5 of a various number of herbs. Possibly some health potion. I have nearly 40,000 gold pieces, I'm assuming, so I'm
There's your
fucking
13
loaded.
kilos.
I would have skipped town. I would have skipped town a long time ago.
Yeah.
So my assumption here is that I'm trying to find a lantern. Now,
Wasn't-
this totally
there
could
already
have
a
gone.
lantern on your hip?
No,
Yeah,
the lantern
like-
was on Solder's hip, and he's asking me to also equip a lantern.
He has a lantern.
He does,
And he wants
yes.
you to also have a one.
Correct.
Get your shit together, Solder. Like, seriously.
So a whole bunch of new flashing text appears to the top
No.
left of every single inventory item, because I've just
Yes.
opened the inventory for the first time. Fortunately, the next thing down from curatives that I click on is tools, and the only thing in this tab is a lantern. So hooray,
Okay,
I solved
alright.
the lantern puzzle.
You have solved the inventory puzzle, yes.
Selecting the lantern tells me that it weighs 0.6 cowbells.
Excellent. No, that's
it
how much
is-
it's worth. It's worth 0.6 cowbells. Yeah.
And it is a small light source that burns liquid fuel, which must be replenished. It can be worn on the waist, has enough oil to burn for a while. I'm assuming that's a metric while and not an imperial while. Now we're kind of
We're weighing in
Yeah.
cowbells, and
Sure.
we're measuring volume by estimates. Like, a bit.
sure. So I mean, we're kind of jesting and we're kind of taking the piss a little bit here, but I just want to point out it is a little bit crazy to me the amount of stuff that I've been forced to wade through the instant the game has started purely to equip a lantern.
Yeah.
It would be easy to imagine press E to equip lantern, hold middle mouse button to turn on flashlight or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm trying to figure out, is equipping a lantern a thing that I do often, or is this something that has been constructed specifically so that I have to wrangle with the inventory screen straight away? Because
Sure.
to give this game credit, I have played other RPGs where I've been thrown into a similar circumstance. I'm looking at you, The Witcher 2, and it takes forever to fucking figure out how anything works or to accomplish putting on a pair of boots, I believe it was in the case of that game. In the grand scheme of things, I actually found this quite easily, but it does seem like an awful lot of things with so much superfluous information based on what my current goal is.
Right.
Now, I'm able to describe a lot of these things because I'm literally looking at the game being played back. But as I was playing this, I was entirely laser focused on where is the lantern, where is the lantern, where is the lantern.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's anything else that the game kind of wants me to learn about any of this stuff, I'm really not paying attention to it other than there's a lot of inventory.
Yeah. And just must find lantern so I can play the game.
Absolutely. So I click on the lantern, and this pops up another menu down lower below it that gives me the options of use, give, add oil, or discard. Use is the top default option. It is very brightly illuminated. I click on it. The window closes. I see myself attach said lantern to my hip, and I get another tooltip with another little jingle that pops up now that I'm back in kind of game worldy space. Solder is standing up a little bit ahead of me, and the new tooltip says, press escape to bring up the pause menu where you can check your attributes, a full map, quest information, and more. Would you like to hazard a guess as to what I did next?
Didn't press escape?
No, I totally pressed escape.
Okay. So close. Missed it by that much.
Because that's the only instruction I've been given.
Yeah.
So I press the escape button. I get taken to the main menu, or the pause menu, not the main menu.
Right.
So there's a big column of options down the middle, but then weirdly there's like a button also to the left in a different column and a button to the right in a different column. The one to the left is quests. The one to the right is equipment. Top to bottom down the center. Save/quit, history, map, status, options, and share. So map is in the dead center. It is selected. It is bright red when the rest of them are grey, and my mouse cursor is over it. So I click on it. Mm-hmm. It opens a map, which is much as you would expect, kind of like a coffee-stained canvas sort of hand-drawn looking thing.
Yeah.
I can see a very small portion of this map that clearly correlates to the space that I'm in. It tells me I am in neighborhood, the Tainted Mountain Temple.
Is that really what they call it?
Well, neighborhood's kind of up the top in the title bar, and the Tainted Mountain Temple is kind of over to the side. But it does seem like a weird descriptor for a Tainted Mountain Temple.
Yeah, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy there. It's like you're never going to really have a nice neighborhood if you call it tainted.
Yes. Which Tainted Mountain Temple is this? Can you give me a postcode?
Yeah.
It's in the
I can see.
Yeah,
I can see
it's
on the
area.
mini map. I can see that I am a bright white arrow, and I can see that Solder is a slightly smaller red arrow, and it appears to be tracking not only position but direction that the characters are facing. There's
So
also floating. Sorry, go on, Steve.
Is that red icon the same one that was next to his health bar earlier?
No, this one is sort of like a shallow arrow. The one
Okay.
next to his health bar is just a dot.
Oh, okay. All right.
Speaking of dots, floating in the void of the unexplored areas of the map, there are also two white dots that are near each other, but I don't know what they are, and I don't really mouse over them because it told me to open the pause menu and check shit out. I checked out the map, and I didn't stay there for long because it didn't seem to want me to do anything here. So I close the map, I go back into the game, and I go, well, I guess I was around. So I do a little bit of camera scrolling to get a sense of whether I have to invert any axes, and thankfully I don't. And I start running along. There's kind of a dead body just up ahead of me with a bunch of sort of glowy, flashy herbs lying next to them. So I assume this is like, pick me up.
Too much dank kush.
When I get close to it, I get a little pop-up on the screen that tells me this is called Greenwarish, and I see a little, what would be the inventory icon for it, I assume. The E button that didn't have any text next to it before now starts flashing brightly and has pick
Okay.
up next to it.
All right.
So I press the E button, I pick it up. Pick up is now immediately replaced with examine. So this E button is clearly being used in a context-sensitive fashion.
Yeah.
Then when I actually hit examine, my assumption was that I would examine what I just picked up, but it's actually referring to the
body?
dead body that was
Yeah.
right next to it. Yeah.
Sure.
So when I select it, Solder says, "The bones of still more soldiers, how awful." I hear this from him talking. I also get it in the little text menu of what he's saying. Also down the bottom in another window says, "A pitiful end, ellipses." I don't know if this is the game commenting on something or if this is supposed to be my character also saying it. I don't appear to hear myself talking. Anyway, having examined this dead body, we head through this open doorway at the front. Tooltip then tells me press left button or right button to attack, so I start just randomly swinging my sword in this empty corridor.
Take that, Solder.
Not appearing to comment on my immediate actions, Soldo says, "We near our journey's end, the final station of our long struggle."
So please don't start fucking around.
Well,
now.
I'm not really listening to him at this point because I'm level 20 and learning how to swing a sword.
Yeah.
And there's a crate in front of me. And I'm going to smash that crate. Except, spoilers, I don't, because I'm starting to learn, you know how with these sorts of games, like how much weight do I have when I'm changing direction and how hard is it to face in the direction that I want to swing, particularly when you do a lunging sword strike. And the answer to this question is there's not as much finesse here as I clearly require as a noob to smash a crate. So I give up pretty quickly and I keep going.
Okay.
So I can see a bit of... Sorry, go on, Steve.
Did it seem like you couldn't smash the crate, or just that it was not an easy task?
It looks like the kind of thing where if you saw it in a Diablo game, you would be able to break it.
Right.
But
I'm getting more of an MMO vibe than a Diablo vibe from this, though.
Well, certainly based on the camera style, this is much more WoW than Diablo, but also I have direct control over my avatar. Here I'm moving it around and I'm specifically actioning. I'm assuming what are going to be physics swings, maybe, I don't know, in particular directions. What's cool about the way that this character swings is it looks like there's a lot of weight and a lot of force going into these swings. Like it looks like I mean business. So as I continue down the corridor, I'm walking out of this warmly lit area and I can see a really grey, really smoky kind of ruined section coming up ahead. Now, as we approach this, we suddenly get a big dramatic swell of music, which I haven't heard in-game up until this point. And on the far wall, I get a big shadow coming across the wall of like a dragon's mouth and teeth like a really big overscaled shadow. There's lots of dead trees and stuff as I emerge out into this space. And as I come around the corner, I see a giant fucking red dragon perched on this rock, and it's roaring.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's roaring, and it just shoots this massive gout of fire, and it explodes, and we get cool like motion blurring and particle effects, and the whole screen goes orange and just shits on fire everywhere. So it's a nice kind of dramatic surprise. So
And then it rolls credits.
so a whole bunch of stuff catches fire that wasn't previously burning before. And Solde, who is probably about, 5 or 6 meters in front of me, without breaking stride, walks calmly through the flames,
Nice.
immediately past this giant dragon. And here's what he says.
You ain't
He
shit.
says, "It shows itself. It's beyond imagining. Mind the edge, master. This way. A fall here means certain death." As he's veering around
so
to the
good.
right, he spots some enemy goblins and immediately charges into battle, completely ignoring the giant dragon immediately to his left. Now,
Solder's my hero.
funnily enough, while Solder is just blindly, calmly striding and making like 5 or 6 comments that each have their own line in the text window with his name above every line. While he's saying this, the dragon is actually talking to me, and I didn't realize this when I played it. I only heard this when I was reviewing the footage.
Great.
It's speaking in world. It has a big, deep, booming, as you'd expect a dragon to sound voice.
Benedict Cumberbatch,
And it's also
Yep.
it also has text on screen. It's in that window down the bottom.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a title card that says dragon. It isn't queuing in and popping every line, so the dialogue isn't moving on screen and catching my eye.
Right.
So I don't have anything visually that's kind of pointing this out to me. Anyway, what it says as Solder is charging into battle and just spouting multiple lines of dialogue at me.
He's an idiot.
It says, come Arisen, forge in my fire the next link in the endless chain. Speaking over the top of the dragon, just disobeying all the rules of etiquette, while currently fighting 2 goblins, Solde says again, "Come, master, we'll rout them in a single charge." So he don't give a fuck. He is so over this dragon shit because there's goblin business at hand here.
Yeah.
So he just starts wailing on these 2 goblins. They're quite short. They're carrying like clubs. They're kind of wrinkly. They got pointy ears and they got scrappy looking weapons and armor. Health bars appear above them. They're kind of like a magenta-y purple color. So this does contrast quite nicely with the green health bar that is above Solder's head. And we fairly easily and swiftly dispense these 2. Like, we are very, very OP compared to these enemies that we've just run into. So we make our way down a small corridor. The music then slowly sort of starts to fade out, and we hit a giant jump down drop. So this is very clearly something that I have to jump down, because as soon as Solde reaches it, he jumps down it. And as he jumps, he says, "A gateway to the rift, here, Arisen, go and touch that stone." And just as I reach the edge and I'm looking down, he has landed right next to a stone that looks a bit different.
So not a
looks a bit
euphemism.
different from the other stones. It says spacebar jump. I jump down, and as I hit the ground, I get a little in-game cutscene. And it's just a sweeping camera override that focuses and sort of orbits around this stone to highlight it for me in case I hadn't identified what it was.
It's like, no, seriously, this stone.
The tooltip tells me invoking this stone can gain you new allies known as, quote, pawns, P-A-W-N-S, whose loyalty in battle will never falter. So I'm like, okay, cool. This stone has a bunch of kind of runes and text carved on it in this big sweeping spirally sort of pattern. I'm then taken back in a game. I run over to the stone. The E button flashes and tells me examine. And as I select it, I get this weird sort of rolly Dutch angle camera swoop. And I think the camera pushes into me in first person. So I'm assuming the implication here is that I am now looking from this is probably sounding terrible as I turn on the microphone. I'm turning from the stone to look at this rift that has suddenly appeared in the sky behind me. Everything goes black and there's this glowing sort of blue rift in the sky. The tooltip tells me, "'Tis a rift stone, a stone etched with strange markings. It may be used to summon pawns from beyond." Again, is this me thinking? Is this the game telling me information? I don't know.
It's the lore telling you.
Out of this giant rift, and this is quite a cool, like there's lots of cool particles and stuff coming off these characters there as they appear, but they're also very clearly scaling up from a small scale, and it does make them look and feel like they're emerging from another dimension and kind of unfolding in the current one.
Right.
It's quite a nice use of camera angle and scaling and particles. So this first character comes tumbling out of this thing and lands quite calmly, almost like Galaxy Quest style, on the ground. There's a wet sort of splushing sound that matches with the kind of wet, icky particles that are coming off them. And as this character lands, they sort of do a little bit of a weighted landing, and then as they straighten up, they raise their hands in kind of this gesture, a very specific gesture with their right hand and kind of a couple of fingers extended next to their head. It feels a little bit like a salute or a greeting, and a formal style of greeting. So first one character does this, and then a second one immediately appears and adopts the same pose. So these two characters, the first one to emerge is what I'm assuming is a dark-skinned woman. She has a bunch of arrows and a bow over her shoulder and like some knives and like a bone horn. And she's dressed in reasonably sparse armor. And then the next one is a much shorter creature, to which I can't immediately distinguish gender, if this is in fact a race that has genders. They're not human. I'm basing this on the slightly different shape of their face and the fact that they're quite small. They are dressed kind of head to toe in these green robes, and they have like a pointed hat with like flaps hanging down the side, and they have what I'm assuming is a staff or something on their back. So these are the two pawns that have appeared out of this rift. I then get taken back into game mode. I get another tingle ding of a tooltip. As you progress in your adventures, pawns will provide you with useful information and hints. The names that appear over these two characters, the one that I'm going to ascribe as a ranger is named Quince. This is the dark-skinned woman with the ponytail and the arrows. She has a yellow dot next to her health bar. Morgana, with two N's, is the shorter one and has a blue dot next to their health bar. So I immediately now assume red dot equals warrior, Solde, yellow dot equals ranger or rogue, Quince, and blue dot equals wizard or mage, Morgana.
Do you have that confirmed in your 10 minutes?
Not overtly by the game, but it makes sense based on what I see the characters do and on how they appear to be outfitted.
Sure.
So Quince then says, Our kind is ever ready to fight by the grace of your guidance, Arisen. And then before Quince finishes talking, Morgana pipes up with, This aura, 'tis the dragon for certain. So this is the point where the game starts to enter what I'm going to refer to as Robert Altman territory.
Okay.
These three characters who are going to hang out with me for the remainder of the 10 minutes, they like to comment on things in a very casual fashion whenever they feel the urge to do so.
Okay.
With absolutely no consideration of where I am, what I'm doing, what the game is instructing me to do, which others of them are talking, or what they're talking about. Now, that may sound, air quotes, less than ideal. However, there's a certain charm that comes from these characters, much like Solde just brazenly, blithely, calmly walking straight past a dragon while offering comments to me. There's a weird kind of singular purpose that these characters seem to have, because they're making all of these possibly inane, occasionally amusing comments while they're in the middle of just wrecking shit in combat. What's also
Dragon's
interesting,
Dogma the video game shortcuts? Like, or the video game version of Gosford Park? Like, is that what we have here?
We finally have the Nashville of video games.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting here, and I noticed this on reflecting on playing this game, is that the goofiness of the way that these characters speak and how they speak and when they speak kind of distracted me from the fact that they just deal with shit without me having to go, and now I pause the game, and now what do I tell Solde to do, and now what do I tell Quince to do, and now what do I tell Morgana to do, much as you would do in say a BioWare game. Yeah, Dragon Age or something like that. And that's not saying that one form is better than the other, but this is distinctly different. And the fact that there was this weird vibe because they're just casually commenting on everything didn't allow me to recognize as I was playing it just how autonomous these three, I'm assuming Solde is also a pawn, just how autonomous these three pawns are and how much they just do stuff and help you not die. So I think that's kind of interesting, and maybe we'll dig into that a little bit later.
On that note, how much of them casually discussing things feels out of place versus them being extremely well prepared for what's happening?
Okay, so I've just been introduced to this concept of pawns, so I guess we could assume that this is just the norm for them, and they're just summoned to wherevs whenever there's an Arisen around, I'm assuming, because I'm clearly an Arisen. They keep addressing me as such.
Proper noun, I'm
assuming. Maybe... Yes, proper noun. So maybe this is just par for the course for them. And there, in some of the dialogue here that I'm going to read, like there is a little bit of a kind of an icky vibe of like you, the player, are way more valuable and important than us mere pawns. I mean, the game even calls them pawns.
Yeah.
But at least,
even though they can kind of take care of everything for you.
Yeah, but at least that tone is consistent. And it's kind of right there from the beginning. So, I mean, I guess we could draw parallels and talk about, power fantasies and the player always being the most important person in the world and whatever. But that's clearly the case in this game.
Or even just the monomyth, even just the American monomyth.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like having its cake and eating it too here.
Yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to perhaps use as a way of illustrating a comparison is I was also thinking a lot about Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. Because in those games, if you do happen to be playing them by yourself and you've got bots controlling the other characters, or even if you are playing with other humans, there's dialogue between the characters that is relevant to the context of what's happening, that tells an overarching narrative as the characters get more experience from scenario to scenario and they become more aware of the story world and what's happening with zombies and blah, 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 blah. And there's also clear relationships that are built between the characters. That is, I mean, I've only played the first 10 minutes of this game, so, 10 minutes versus many, many hours of Left 4 Dead. But it's clear that this game isn't doing that. The dialogue that I'm hearing these characters say isn't building relationships between those characters. And in terms of relationships with my character, it's just clearly saying, you're the Arisen and we're here to help you. However, they do also pipe up when they are doing specific things in the game that offer me opportunities to do combo moves or finisher moves, and we'll get to that in a moment. But the weird thing is that those moments are presented in exactly the same form and tone as all of the general chatter that's going on. And it's only camera overrides that clue me into what's going on. Anyway, so Quince and Morgana have just appeared. They've started commenting on things. So this tooltip's telling me that as you progress with your adventures, pawns will provide you with useful information and hints. So I'm like, okay, well, they're just standing there. Am I supposed to talk to them? So let's find out if I can talk to them. So I kind of, and if you're reviewing the footage that's going to go up on YouTube, you'll see that I kind of amble around them and I'm facing towards them, but that E button's not lighting up. And it takes me a few moments to realize that just facing them with the camera doesn't count. And facing them with my character doesn't count. I have to be around the front of them, facing them, to be able to talk to them.
All right.
Thus, we get
it's about courtesy, Tony. Like it's about being polite.
Thus, we get a small bit of hilarity. So I walk around, and Solde eventually snaps to face me and says, "'Tis my duty to share this journey with you, and an honour besides." I'm like, "Thanks, Solde." I then attempt to see what Morgana has to say. And Morgana's voice seems to indicate that Morgana is a she, which I guess I could have assumed also from the name. "Lucky is the pawn able to fight at the Arisen's side. I am thankful," she says. Armed with this knowledge, I then try and talk to Quince. Now, I attempt this a number of times and fail. Because I walk in front of her and I think I'm facing her, but I'm actually facing at Solde, who is a few meters away.
Right.
And he speaks up instead and says, just being at your side fills this pawn with vigor, Arisen. So he's referring to himself as this pawn and not me. Mm-hmm. So then I go, I didn't mean to talk to you, Solde. I want to talk to Quince. And as I turn a tiny bit to my left, because she's immediately to my left, I bump into her and she turns and runs away from me.
Nice.
I'm sorry for getting in your way, Arisen.
So then I run around to her other side and I try to do it again and I accidentally activate Morgana again.
Wow.
Perfect.
And she says, best we brought cures for various ailments, they may save our lives. So at this point I give up and I just run through the open doorway that's immediately in front of me and continue my journey. I get another tooltip tingle, and F1, F2, F3 as button icons have appeared in the screen. F1 says go, exclamation mark. F2 says come, exclamation mark. And F3 says help, exclamation mark. And it says use F1, F2, F3 to issue basic orders to your pawn allies. So I hit F2. My character gestures, kind of like motioning with their arm. I don't speak aloud, but the F2 come button is selected. And then all three of them acknowledge me.
At the same time?
Kind of, sort of.
Just in chorus, they're just like, yes, Arisen.
They're slightly offset. But Solde says, I'm on my way. Morgana says, I'll go at once. And then Solde says, 'tis our valor, pit against the worm's evil.
Jeez, all right.
And then Quince,
just calm down. Like, take it down a notch, Solde.
Yeah. And then Quince, I hear very distantly, because I assume she's a ways behind me, yells, a goblin pack. Just as we end up fighting more goblins, there are 3 of them this time. The tooltip tells me attacking while holding left alt or left control will perform a weapon skill.
Okay.
Now, I cannot emphasize just how quickly all of these pawns fly into action. It barely gives me any opportunity to do anything at all.
Right.
And then the fight is kind of over. It is impressive to watch these 3 work. They're doing all sorts of crazy shit. I'm kind of swinging my sword around. I think I'm helping. I get like 65 experience points or whatever.
Nice.
But while they're wrecking shop, Solde says, no, I fear the whole of the vanguard has been slaughtered. Quint says, we cannot suffer the worm to work any further atrocities. Just casually commenting on the dragon while they're killing goblins.
Yeah.
Morgana says, take my fire. Solde says, I'll get the weaklings out of the way. Morgana says, insolence. Solde says, we'll rout them in a single charge. Quint says, even in numbers, a weakling is a weakling still. Morgana says, fire, lend thy kiss. There's more goblins pouring around the corner. They're being destroyed. I don't know what's going on. The tooltip tells me, press F to pick up items, people, or enemies. You can restrain or throw targets, or press F again to put them down. I'm assuming that means place them down on the ground and not put them down as in we had to take the dog to the vet.
Yeah.
So by this point, everyone stops talking because I assume everything is dead. I don't know where anything died. I don't know if I'm supposed to loot anything, and I'm kind of in shell shock.
Yeah.
At this point, Quince then says, monsters have made a shambles of this place.
The monsters.
I don't think the monsters did anything.
I assume she's not wrong. I wander around for a little while before I find the exit. Quince says, 'twas the feet of countless pilgrims first beat down this road to the temple. Solde says, I feel it close by, Arisen. Stay ever ready as we advance.
Like you need to be ready for anything. We're taking care of all of it.
Then he asks, are there no other survivors? And then he says, come, master. I'm just kind of ambling around looking to see what's going on. They've run off a different way because they clearly have waypoints. So I hit a little trigger volume. I get another in-game cutscene. I get a zoom back from the space that I appear to be in, and I see the different legs of a fantastic creature come walking past. It looks big, it sounds heavy, and then I'm back in game. It tells me you can dash by clicking in, I assume, left shift, both during and outside of combat. I'm stuck in a small corridor at this point, so I don't really know how to use it. And then Quince yells, goblin! And they all immediately run down the corridor around a corner that I can't see and start wrecking shop again. Solde says, I sense another presence, a mighty beast, but not the worm. I assume he's referring to the creature that I just saw in a cutscene.
Yep.
I managed to find them and follow them. Solde says, a survivor. Morgana says, take my fire. Then suddenly, the camera has an override thing happen. It sort of zooms in, everything goes into slow motion. And I see Solde holding a goblin as the camera sort of slowly pushes around him, and Solde is sort of illuminated, selected. All of the UI disappears, and in white text down the bottom, I hear him say this, and I see the same text written. I've hold of one, now strike. So the game has very clearly grabbed my attention here. It's turned off all the UI. It's zoomed the camera over to Solde. It's changed the way that his text is displayed on screen. It's put everything into slow motion, and it's doing a slow orbit. So it's clear that the game's like, this is shit that you need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
It then sweeps back and gives me control. All the UI appears again. I start wailing on this goblin that he's holding. But so does everyone else in the room, including some new person, who I assume is the survivor they were referring to, who has a blue bar above their head and is dressed in armor and has a shield. As soon as the goblin dies, all of the pawns just fuck off. I don't know where they're going. Thanks, Siri. Siri just heard me swear and told me not to swear. That's amazing. So
that's good. That's good of Siri to do so.
They all just fuck off around the corner. And then this other NPC is just sort of standing there staring at me. I don't know what he's expecting me to do. Morgana, as she disappears, says, right this way. I walk up to this other character and press the E button. And he gets a name tag, which is Sir, S-E-R, Sir Ashroar. And he says, Arisen, you've come. I fear our defeat is plain to see. So he clearly knows who I am as well, and he clearly knows why I'm here, but I have no idea what's going on. I'm assuming he's saying that they were here for a purpose and have failed, and maybe that's why I've been sent in. I don't know. We thought to inundate the worm with sheer numbers, a sea of blades, 'twas a fool's hope. Did
you have a Morgana? Because apparently she's really good.
Literally all of the pawns are gone. I don't know where they are. They ran back out the way they came, and I can't see them anymore.
They're going to kill that dragon before you even see it.
Spoilers, I don't see the dragon in my 10 minutes.
Yeah, because it's dead.
Sir Ashroar continues.
It's already taken care of.
Our sea runs dry, and the Duke's army is lost in the gambit. Arisen, I beg you, sir, grant vengeance to those who've fallen. If this be of use, blah, 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 blah. I start skipping through this because I don't understand what's going on. Yeah. Morgana then yells from somewhere, come, master. So I run back to where I was before, and I see them waiting for me at a corner. So we continue on our merry way. We're kind of turning left and right through tight corridors, up and down a few sets of stairs. Quint says, more bodies, the worm must be made to settle this debt. Then the camera is taken away from me again. I get a big sweep down the corridor out into a clearing, or almost like a courtyard or something that I'm coming into, and I see what I'm assuming is a harpy feeding on a carcass. This creature takes off into the air, and I hear a cackling. I'm then back in control of my character. I can see this creature immediately in front of me outside. And then Morgana yells, snow harpy, and Quince yells, beware the harpy's song. And we're back in combat again. I get another camera override where Solde is bashing his shield and is clearly doing a taunt and says something about, I'll lure them in, take them down. And then shit just gets crazy for a while. Their screams chill the blood to ice, says Morgana. Strike, lest the harpy sings, says Solde. This thing has flown into the corridor. He then pins it to the ground and says, I've hold of it quickly, and I start wailing on it as he's got it pinned to the ground. So this is the point where I want to say, like, these characters deal with shit.
Mm.
They're dealing with shit. There's 3 of them and there's 1 of me. I'm supposed to be the Arisen, and they're supposed to be pawns, but I cannot overstate how little I am doing.
Yeah.
Compared to what they're doing.
It seems like they're going out of their way to include you in their activities, if anything.
It's very nice that they're keeping me informed of all of the things that they're doing, and just generally commenting on the goings on as I amble my way through. As up until this point, a fairly ineffectual protagonist.
Yeah.
It's almost like your Solder's younger sibling, and like your mum is like, no, you've got to take him out on your adventures, make him feel special.
Yeah.
Call him Arisen or something.
Yeah, just call him Mr. President, so he feels special. So it's kind of at this point where, as I was playing it, I was like, I don't know am I supposed to be doing better than this? Am I supposed to be contributing more? But at the same time, I'm starting to find these three characters kind of endearing in their very effective jankiness.
Right.
It's a weird mix. It's a very strange mix to experience. Anyway, there's a bunch of harpies outside. We roll outside and start fighting them. Oh god, there's so many comments that they make as these things continue. We jump down off of a ruined bridge into a large area. There's like a goblin wizard and a bunch of other goblins. One of them starts throwing explosive barrels, and Solde says, let's make use of these explosives. Quint says, we'll rout them in a single charge.
He's very certain of that.
Now, amusingly, and again, until I reviewed the footage, I never saw this. The tooltip down the bottom says, pay heed to the world around you. Some ledges may be scaled, but a long fall will end in injury or death. I never saw this while I was playing.
Okay.
But I did hear Solde say, they're a threat when well unified, and Morgana says, I'll grant you fire's blaze. Solde says, now Arisen, end it. Watch your step. Morgana says, we cannot suffer the worm to... And then it gets taken away from me again as Solde has hold of one of them, strike now. So it just cuts off all of this other chatter that's happening. Anyway, there's a lot of combat, like a lot of combat. And I'll leave it up to you if you're reviewing this footage to see just the panoply of comments that characters make repeatedly. Morgana gets an override as she, I think, is holding something using a spell. So I'm getting notifications like I'm in group chat with 50 people at this point.
Seems crazy.
It's just going over and over and over and over. And they all seem to be getting...
It's like just the general chat.
Now, I know that I assume that the fight is over when all of them just start going back into slowly strolling casual walk mode. And Solde says, we have triumphed, which is immediately followed by Morgana saying, there, master, snow harpies. So I think
is no rest.
I think I may have walked around something and another enemy saw me and then shit's on again.
Yep.
Do either of you have any questions before we get to the mini boss fight? Because it is coming.
All right. So I think it's interesting how much you're enjoying or finding
having no idea what I'm doing. Yeah.
That, and also how endearing you're finding these NPCs. Because I feel like if there was this much chatter and this much buffoonery happening, and they weren't doing anything useful, like if they weren't wrecking shop, this conversation would be very different.
Absolutely, and I think that's really critical here. There is an excess of information being thrown at me. In dialogue form, in voiceover form, in UI, and instructions, and camera overrides, and all this sort of stuff. Like, it feels really busy, and it feels really busy despite my presence. Like, the fact that I'm here, other than to hear these characters comment on things, I'm not sure what I'm contributing or achieving.
Maybe that's your main job, is just listen to them.
Yeah. You're there to document the happenings.
Yeah.
It does seem like a lot of what they're doing is just barks for barks' sake.
Yeah.
Like, we shall route them in a single charge for the third time in less than 10 minutes.
Yep, but this is the weird thing, right? Because there's a mix here of barks for barks' sake. Some stuff commenting on the context of why we're here. They keep referring to the worm or the dragon or this other creature.
Yeah.
They also do barks to announce that they've spotted an enemy, like goblins, blah, 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 blah. They have combat has finished, we are victorious comments. And all of those are presented in exactly the same form and exactly the same tone and exactly the same manner. The only one that is substantially different is when I get that camera override, slow-mo, orbit around the character speaking, saying, I'll lure them off, or I have a hold of them, or strike them while they're down, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
So that's a clear distinction of difference of information. but it is very, very odd to have such a jumble where there's not a distinction of this is this form of information, this is a different form of information. Like there seems to be a big pool where there's just whatever happens to come to mind at the time. So it's also worth noting that I do get a camera override zooming over to a portcullis in the middle of this battle. It opens, and some other people like the ally that I met before are kind of standing there. They come running around the corner, and they look quite out of breath. So as we run towards this door, Solder says, "Our goal is ahead." And then somebody called Sir Palotti says, "Arisen, this way, sir." And these three blue-barred NPCs run off around the corner. Sir Palotti continues, "The worm awaits beyond, sir. I should be proud to guide you."
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. So simultaneously, Sir Palotti is telling me his scripted dialogue, and like Morgana and Quince and Solder just saying whatever shit pops into their head, and this is all jumbled over
Rather
the
than
top
a single
of one
charge, I shall lend you my fire. Yeah,
So-
all the classics.
Yep. Fire, kiss thy blade.
So we sort of run around a few corners and corridors. We come out into a large clearing, and at one end of this sort of courtyard clearing area, there are a couple of giant braziers that are on fire, and they're right next to these big, tall columns and a big doorway, so this feels important and looks important. Sir Palotti says, "Our army is routed, 'tis plain truth." I get a bar at the top that tells me Grand Hall as I come into this space. And then Sir Palotti continues, "Beyond that grand door, the dragon makes its roost." So I'm right on the threshold, if you'll pardon the pun, of facing this dragon. The screen then fades to black, and I get another in-game cutscene where this giant creature that I saw the feet of before appears on a ledge above and leaps down, presumably onto Sir Palotti. It's one of these three NPCs. Now, when this thing lands, I actually get a sense of just how big this thing is. So the height of its head is about the height of a person.
Right.
It's a giant,
Wow.
mythical-looking creature. It has the forequarters and the head of a lion. It has a goat's head coming out of its back, and it has a giant snake for a tail. This thing starts mauling one of these NPCs in the cutscene, and it's clear that I have to now fight this thing. So this is a chimera, a mythical creature. I think of Greek mythology. Most of them tend to be.
It is, yeah. It's from Greek mythology, yeah.
And it gets a very, very substantial health bar, and it has a bunch of magic-looking shit floating around it. So I am now fighting a three-headed composite mythical creature in an arena area. With my three pawns, Quince, Morgana, and Solder. So Quince says, "A chimera there." Solder says, "No interruptions." Morgana says, "Magic will still the lion's head." So the lion's head is doing shit. The goat's head is doing shit.
Shut the fuck up. It's serious business now.
Yeah. The lion's head is doing shit. The goat's head is doing other shit. And the snake's head is also doing other shit. And
Okay.
this
But
thing is
presumably
roaming.
the snake's head is doing like nothing because it's at the back of the thing.
Well, it can literally
around.
snake its way around and do
True.
stuff.
Yeah.
So this thing has a giant purple health bar above the top of it. It also has two purple dots at the left end. I don't know if that means when you empty this, one of the heads is dead, and then you get another two heads. That was my assumption. So the short version of this is that I try to hit this thing, and I watch the rest of them do a whole bunch of stuff, and I see the health bar slowly drain, and they say a lot of things for the remaining 45 or so seconds until I hit my 10 minutes. Hit my 10 minutes, and I don't end up defeating this thing. So unless you want me to just read the crazy shit they were saying aloud, we're kind of
I
done.
do.
You do?
I really do. I'm not going to make you do it, but I'm just going on the record as saying I would like to hear it.
Well, fortunately, you'll be able to review this in the footage that we're going to put up. So it also tells me that like left alt is now secondary skills, E is now shield summons, right click is now symbol attack, as in CYMBAL, and left click is
clang.
shield strike. I have no idea what any of this means, and I didn't really notice it while I was playing, and I don't know what I was doing. I literally have no idea if I was being effective or not. But I can tell you that at one point, Solde jumps onto the side of the lion's head and says something like, "I've got it." And he just hangs onto the side of this head for quite a while.
Like you're holding onto it all right,
It was pretty amusing. At one point, I assume most of the other people, I and most of the other characters also got knocked over, and I appeared to just lay on the ground for a long time.
Yep.
And like trying to hit buttons and get up again wasn't really working.
Just like
Anyway.
hi, you're probably wondering how I got into this situation.
Yeah. I shall wait here, Quince paste.
Anyway, that's kind of my 10 minutes.
All right.
I realized that there was a giant stream of consciousness shambles, but that's exactly what this felt like.
Sure.
Especially in that last boss fight,
Yeah.
how much of what they were saying felt like they were telling you how to fight the enemy versus their regular barks of nothingness?
It's a mix of both. So Morgana has said, magic will still the lion's head. Solde is saying, attack while I hold it.
Well, he's said that several times now.
Yep. Morgana also has the amazing line of "You shall not cast," as she is presumably trying to stop the thing from using magic.
Yep.
So
I can also apparently grab this thing and climb on it, but I didn't notice that tooltip while I was playing.
Yeah.
So, yep.
I know that from Monster Factory.
Nice.
Also, that you probably could have picked up and thrown your teammates off a cliff.
Nice. Anyway, the goat head, I recall it's them saying the goat head is the one that's casting and is vulnerable to like physical stuff or something.
Right.
I'm not entirely clear what the snake or the lion. It's those of you who are watching the footage can just call me out and go, "It's clearly here," and it is, but I kind of don't want to.
It's a nightmare of different things.
Yeah.
I was wondering how difficult it is in that moment. I'm guessing from your description, quite difficult to tell what is them trying to give you a hint versus a direction versus just shouting things.
Absolutely.
And moreover, it sounds like it's even would be difficult to tell whether what they're telling you is a hint or just them being like, "I shall stab it from the side." Like, if that's a bark, or is that like, maybe you should be stabbing it from the side?
Yeah. Is that what you, the
Like,
pawn,
should you
are
be
doing,
following
or is that
suit?
what you, the pawn, are telling me, the Arisen, to do? It's not entirely clear. Like, there is an awful lot of stuff coming at me here in multiple different forms while I'm trying to fight a giant fucking chimera that I don't understand what it's doing or how it works. Yeah.
Using a bunch of skills that it just turned on when you entered this room.
Correct.
Did you even use your weapon skills, sword arts, something? It told you about them about 5 minutes in, but then I don't think you actually ended up needing to use them at any point.
The most honest way I can answer that question, Steve, is to say I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just really bummed that you didn't get to use your symbol attack during your 10 minutes. I really wanted to find out how that worked.
Yeah.
If you just like grabbed like two big pieces of brass and just clanged it over their head.
I mean, a hi-hat would have been nice too, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Yeah, for the sneaky encounters, you want to use the hi-hat.
Oh my God! I just realised why we all lay down. We've been put to sleep.
There you go. That makes sense.
There's little Z's coming out of all of us.
Oh, fantastic!
Nice little nap,
like
little
really
recharge.
little Z's.
I wonder if that's like if you get dazed, do you see like little birds floating around your head?
I mean, I can't say that it doesn't happen.
If that's the
So
case,
that's confirmed.
Yeah. You may actually just pull symbols out of your bag and clang them together.
So, Tony, I've got a question for you.
Yep, go for it.
We've sort of established that you're largely ineffectual over the course of these 10 minutes, right?
Yes, I am. Well,
I
I certainly feel that way.
Sure. Do you think that's a problem?
In what context do you want me to answer that question? Did it feel like I was bored? No. Do I feel like I've learned anything about how to play the game? No.
Okay, so on that second one, is that then a problem? Or is the purpose of this game to sort of just ride the roller coaster, as it were?
Well, I can tell you that riding the roller coaster is what I did, and I can tell you that I derived a lot of enjoyment out of it. but I don't know what it's about to then throw me back into. So we can make a bunch of assumptions here. If they're going with an abilities kind of thing, perhaps similar to, I don't know, let's say the start of Dragon Age 2.
And, right? Or any God of War game.
Yeah. If I'm supposed to get a sense of the possibility space of what I, as the Arisen, can do, other than summoning pawns who do amazing work on their own, I'm not really sure what's at my disposal. I certainly swing a sword around a lot, and I certainly try not to stand in the way of things that are trying to hit me.
Maybe that's what it's advertising to you. It's like when you're level 20, you don't have to do shit anymore. Like your job is done.
Maybe. I don't know. So it's not entirely clear to me because of when my 10 minutes expired, because it kind of happened right before I think I died and I think I was supposed to. And I think that actually then triggers the rest of the game starting. So it's unfortunate that I didn't hit that point maybe a bit earlier. Although this thing does have a health bar, and it is slowly draining, and they are telling me, like, you know, the lion fears magic, the goat is vulnerable to physical, blah, 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 blah. So maybe I can beat it.
Snake hates Sunday.
Maybe I'm supposed to beat this thing and then the dragon defeats me.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Or maybe the dragon's like, now it's time for me to tell you my dogma.
But
here are the rules that you must abide by.
And the other thing that I'm wondering is this, and this is purely me making assumptions, is that if this is an ability section that isn't that doesn't end with like ... 10 years earlier, and then I work my way back up to this point, I'm assuming the point that it's trying to make is Arisens are people who are special, and they are reborn or they re-emerge. Maybe this was me last time, maybe I get killed, maybe I'm born again and I have to do a bunch of other stuff. This is just purely just me spinning shit. I don't know if that is in fact the case, but that would feel like it fits given what's happening here. So in terms of that framing and giving me, I got a dragon straight up front. I'm fighting a chimera. I've had a bunch of battles with harpies and goblins. Like, I'm getting a good sense of like wading through and fighting things and watching pawns do their thing, commenting at every step. It's kind of like a Twitter conversation where you're not really sure which response relates to which other response.
Yeah. The thing that I think I appreciate most about their dialogue is that it seems like they're lines from stanzas that have just been plucked randomly. Like, I'm waiting for the second line where there's a rhyme to the final word, and it just never happens.
Right.
Which I think is kind of wonderful. I like the idea that there maybe is actually an epic poem being read to you just out of order. Like, what if this is actually a musical?
This is like the Iliad in a blender.
Yeah, exactly. It's Hamilton if it was beat poetry.
Right. Okay, so there's sort of one broad topic area that we've touched on but haven't really dived into yet that I did want to bring up. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before that?
I got nothing.
No, go ahead.
So the game calls these characters pawns.
Yep.
And I'm the Arisen, and they're clearly deferential to me, and they clearly hold me in great regard.
Yep.
And with great respect. That is not reinforced in any way by my skill or my aptitude in terms of how I'm performing here. And that's a really weird conflict. I have not earned this. I have not earned these characters treating me in this way.
Yeah.
And it seems like a really, really extreme version of, there are the Mensch and there are the Übermensch.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm not quite sure how I feel about that.
Especially because it's placed you in a context where you're like you're level 20 and you have
they are too, I'm assuming. I know Soldier is the same level as me, so
that's the idea, is like you've gone through your development at this point, so you as the Arisen should be the big hero. It's not like this is a New Hope where they're pointing at Luke Skywalker and saying, one day you will be the all-powerful hero that leads us. It's like, you're already there. Like, this is Return of the Jedi.
Right.
You're supposed to be breaking them out of prison. and you're just not. You're just kind of just watching them
Well,
go
that's
about their business.
I think that's kind of unclear, because it says earlier that you're chosen, not necessarily that you are the most well suited to the task. Just that you happen to be Arisen. You have it seems like only you can use the magic stones. Right?
Maybe it's just they got a dud one for this particular Arisen.
That's why everything fails and you have to try again.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
They're just like, roll the dice again. Let's see if we get a different one.
Okay. Actually, something else that's just popped into my head. Steve.
Yep.
With your programmer hat on, when you're trying to program companion AI, I know this is something that I've heard and read about in a number of places, the inherent challenges of that when it comes to making a video game and having them be reliable and predictable and have the player feel like they're not a detriment to the player. Like, in no way do I feel that any of these three are slowing me down or holding me back. They're the only reason that I'm getting anywhere at all.
Yeah.
So how much of that do you think is because the game is not really giving me much control over them at all, and there are three of them, and the law of averages kind of states that at least one of them is going to be doing something good at any given point in time?
I mean, it's from what you've described, it sounds more like they're just over-leveled for this area.
Right.
Right.
Man, but if you went from this to, and now they're a giant pain in the ass, that would be a massive downer.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what happens after this.
Yeah.
But I imagine that, given what you've described, it seems like there's not a Holy Trinity kind of setup happening here. It sounds like everyone just throws damage at everything.
Yeah.
And so as long as they're doing that, I mean, you're probably not going to complain.
Right.
I imagine this thing is set up such that you never feel like the AI is holding you back. As you mentioned, I assume it's that they're the same level as you are.
Okay.
And so I'm guessing the system is they can do as much damage as you can.
Nice.
And they're just going to do that as fast as possible. The thing that I'm guessing is going to seem weird later on, if they keep using these same AI routines, is these are super aggressive AI.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and they're wisecracking as well.
They are. But later on, you might not want them to be aggroing everyone within eyesight or within earshot.
Right. Well, look, for all I know, the game has told me multiple ways that I can moderate their behavior that I just didn't see and wasn't aware of.
I mean, you got given the go, return, and help.
Yes. But I don't want to be sitting there going, come back, come back, come back.
Exactly. Like, you don't want to be,
come back.
Especially given that it's F2. You don't need to walk around the environment mashing F2 so they stop running after the goblins. I don't know. It's going to be a tricky one, and I'm not sure how it's going to pan out in the larger environment. One assumes that maybe you can Pokeball them. I don't know. That you can just turn them off, just be like, return. So they stop fighting.
These are some other things that I'm kind of deeply curious about. What happens when one of them dies? Do I get a new one?
Can they?
Can they die? Can I raise them? Do they die and disappear, and then maybe they can come back again later when I summon them from another rift or a stone?
One of them mentioned having enough herbs for the journey, so assumedly they can die and take damage and need healing.
Right, yeah. But they also appeared out of a magic sky portal.
To whence they shall return.
Yeah, and appeared completely unfussed that they had been thusly summoned. Yeah. Even with the little salute greeting that they very calmly offered me when they arrived. So the oddness of that, and the fact that I don't understand how the rules work and how they might operate, but I kind of want to know, I think is also another testament to the strange kind of allure that this big mishmash of stuff has.
It's certainly a change of pace from the last few games that we've talked about.
Definitely.
In that
I don't think I found myself quite as flabbergasted talking about a game in quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, granted, we only listened to you talk about it at this point, but I still don't know what you really do.
What are you implying, Steve?
Yeah. Like, I don't know what the player, or this game is really about, other than there are mythical things that need to die.
Mm.
Yeah, every single one of them as soon as we see them.
Yes, immediately.
Well, look, the dragon's clearly important, but I don't know why.
Well, it's the embodiment of all evil.
With me,
it's important, but it's clearly not dangerous because Zelda can just run fucking straight through the flame.
Yeah.
Casually,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe he's like the Brock Sampson of this universe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe the fire only hurts you if you run.
Possibly.
Yeah, it's like a T-Rex.
It's like walking on hot coals. Yeah.
Is there any other stuff that you want to chat about, or shall we do a 10-minute check?
No, I think we probably talked about enough of the things.
Okay.
Throughout.
Sure. So 10-minute check. Does this game tell me what it is? It kind of does. I mean, it's a fantasy based, action RPG dungeon crawly thing where I have AI sidekicks who are kind of amazing and way better than me. It shows me plenty of combat. It throws a bunch of concepts that seem to be at the core of how this game operates, like summoning pawns, and they can do stuff for you, and you can give them instructions. But that's kind of where I think when we flip over into the other question, does it teach me how to play it? Not really. Like, it gives me a lot of information, but it doesn't really require me to execute any of it proficiently. Like, there's no skill check happening here.
No.
Unless how to play is just to sit back and observe.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's certainly kind of how I played it out of necessity, because of the barrage of information and the unexpected tone that it took with these NPCs running around and just gabbling constantly at me.
Yeah.
So it certainly gives me a lot of opportunity, if I happen to notice tooltips, to then be able to press buttons. But honestly, in some of these fights, they were... The pawns were wading in so quickly and dealing with things so well that I'd occasionally run up and get a hit or two in, but I didn't ever feel like I was like, oh, I shouldn't have attacked at that moment, or I should have held back, or I probably should have healed myself, or what have I. There's just none of that happening at all.
It sounds more like a group of 7-year-olds playing soccer.
Yeah, kind of
effect.
Yeah.
Very proficient 7-year-olds.
Yes, I mean they have great weapons.
Yeah,
they're level 20 7-year-olds.
Yeah, with axes and magic.
Yeah.
And I mean,
and a really varied vocabulary as well.
Yeah.
Very specific, varied vocabulary.
I guess the proof could be in the pudding here. Like if I were to continue playing this and I do end up, back at level 1, and having to build myself up from scratch, then I would assume that I would be hitting moments where, like, I would, again, I'm just going to make a bunch of assumptions. I'm going to have a limited skill set. I'm going to have poor equipment. I'm not going to be very tough. I'm only going to have one pawn, ? Rather than 3 level 20s, one of each, I'm assuming, different class that have complementary skill sets and so on and so on. The part of it that I wish I had been able to take advantage of more is those interrupt moments where they would grab something or pin something to the ground or hold something in stasis.
Yeah.
Because it so clearly tries to grab my attention that I get a very strong feeling that there are ways there that I could do things really well that presumably would do a ton of damage to a tough enemy or a mini boss, or allow me to pull myself, sort of snatch victory from the jaws of defeat kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that I'm executing those moments well, simply for the fact that so much is happening so quickly and I'm not really doing much to contribute. Anyway, that's kind of a wrap up of my experience of playing the first 10 minutes of Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. So I guess it's time for the plugs, Steve.
Okay. If you have enjoyed listening to this episode, then we'd love to hear from you. If you have any comments or any questions that you want to hit us with, then you can either email us, which is contact@thefirst10minutes.com, or you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, Instagram,
Yay,
YouTube, Twitch, and Patreon, where we are the First 10 Minutes. You can yell at us on any of those services and let us know if you have any feedback or if there's some stuff you want to let us know, things that we got wrong you want to let us know about, any of that sort of stuff. You can find us there. We'd love to hear from you. Similarly, if you have someone who you think would also enjoy listening to this sort of stuff, we'd appreciate the recommend. It's the best way to grow our listenership. For that sort of thing, and we appreciate it.
So it just occurred to me that I'm also super curious as to whether everyone who plays this game gets the same 3 pawns with the same names and the same appearance.
Yeah.
Anyway. Alrighty. So that's another episode. So we thank you all very much for listening, and we will catch you again next time.
Bye.
Bye.